Welcome to our webinar on axial torsion testing for biomedical applications. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Nick Erickson, your host for today's webinar. I'm joined by Teresa Smith, one of Instron's product managers within our low-force static testing team. She's here to discuss torsion testing on its own and in conjunction with axial testing and how it can help you better understand the capabilities of your products. We're also joined by a couple of our application experts, first of which is Landon Goldfarb, one of our senior application engineers. And just in case anyone has any questions about torsion testing for electronic devices, we've also got our electronics testing expert, Kyle Stone, here as well. I encourage you to submit any relevant questions you might have here as we go along, some of which Landon and Kyle will address directly via chat while Teresa is presenting, and others we'll address at the end. So with that said, I'm going to turn things over to Teresa.
Hello, everyone. I'm Teresa Smith, Product Manager at Instron. Thank you for joining me today for the webinar on axial torsion testing for biomedical applications. We'll begin today with a brief discussion on the importance of torsion testing, especially as it relates to medical products. Then we'll spend some time reviewing common torsion applications for medical and biomedical devices. We'll look at some fixtures as well. Finally, we'll discuss some of the benefits that having the ability to perform combined axial torsion loading on a single system can bring to your lab and products. Many medical and pharmaceutical devices, as well as other biomedical products, are subjected to torsional forces when in use. For example, connecting medical tubes or syringes through door locks. It's important to design these devices to ensure that they can be connected properly and securely for the patient's safety. Guide devices for angioplasty are another good example. A surgeon moves and twists the device to help advance the guide wire. So it's critical that the device can withstand these torsion loads and ensure a successful and safe procedure. This also applies to caps for pharmaceutical bottles or vials. They need to be secure to withstand possible stresses during transport, but the end user, whether it's a medical professional or a patient, must be able to open the product without excessive effort. Torsion testing enables manufacturers to simulate real-life use conditions to verify product design and quality and confirm that proper manufacturing techniques are being used to produce their devices. There are a number of options to add torsion capability to your lab. Today, we're going to focus on the torsion add-on. The torsion add-on is a rotary motor that can be added to a new system or an existing axial system that's already in your lab. It's available for use on 6800 or 5900 systems. It can also be added to an older 5500 model, but that requires an upgrade to the control electronics. They are most commonly used on single column or dual column table models, which range in capacity from 500 newtons to 50 kilonewtons. But they can also be added to higher capacity floor models as well. This system has a great deal of flexibility and can be used for numerous applications. The addition of a torsion add-on brings several benefits to your lab. First would be product use simulation. The ability to simulate a product, how the product use allows companies to understand how their devices will function when they're used in the field. And this way they can validate and improve the design. It can also help to reduce time to market. Testing and data analysis can be completed more quickly on an axial torsion system, rather than having to move specimens between different test systems. Also, having torsion control and calculations fully integrated into Blue Hill Universal means that operators require minimum additional training to run axial torsion tests. And adding torsion to an axial system can improve lab efficiency. It takes up less lab space than having a dedicated standalone torsion or axial torsion system. At the same time, it's still able to meet numerous international standards and internal quality requirements. I'd like to begin our applications discussion by sharing a video that highlights some of the most common biomedical applications for which we see the torsion add-on used. ASTM F543 for medical bone screws includes test requirements for a number of torsion tests, including torsional yield strength, breaking angle, and insertion and removal torque. It also contains an axial pull-out strength test, which isn't shown in this video, but can be performed on the system simply by changing the upper fixture. Pen injectors are commonly tested to ensure the dose selection dial can be easily adjusted to the appropriate dosage level by a patient. The cap removal test quantifies the axial force required to remove the cap before use. The user should be able to remove the cap with ease, but the cap needs to be secured during transportation and storage. Lower lock connectors can be tested to ISO 80369-20. There are a number of tests covered by the standard, including several that involve torsion. Finally, we'll see additional syringe lower lock tests. Shown here is an adapter collar torque resistance test. This is followed by a rigid tip cap unscrewing torque test, both per ISO 11040-4 for glass syringes. Let's look more closely at some of these applications. ISO 11040 outlines test requirements for pre-filled syringes. Part 4 of the standard for glass syringes contains 10 annexes, each detailing a different mechanical test, such as flange breaking resistance, needle penetration, and needle pull-out force. 2 of these tests have a torsion component. G4 covers the lower lock adapter collar torque resistance test. This verifies that the collar can withstand the typical torques used during insertion and removal of a conical lock fitting. G5 describes the lower lock rigid tip cap unscrewing torque test. This is performed to confirm that the cap can be removed before use of the syringe with a reasonably small amount of torque. These fixtures are all compatible with the torsion add-on accessory. There are also pre-configured test methods available in Blue Hill Universal to give users a head start on testing. The torsion add-on and the modular design of the fixtures make it possible to perform the complete testing outlined by the standard on one system. The market for lower connector devices is increasing due to an aging global population. The medical industry has moved to standardized connectors to prevent accidents and to ensure compatibility between different devices. ISO 80369-20 covers common test methods for small bore connectors used in all medical applications. 3 of the annexes in the standard, resistance to separation from unscrewing, resistance to overriding, and disconnection by unscrewing, have a torsion component. These tests use a reference connector assembled with the test part. The reference connector is held using a simple adapter. To secure the test component, either a torsional lathe or side action grip is typically used. Both of these provide a strong and consistent gripping force on the specimen throughout the duration of the test. The testing of medical bone screws is a common torsion application. ASTM F543 details a number of tests, including torsional yield strength and breaking angle, insertion and removal torque, and axial pull-out strength. For pharmaceuticals, ASTM D860 measures the torque resistance of threaded closures that are used in both child-resistant and non-child-resistant pharmaceutical packaging. ASTM F1717 outlines requirements to test spinal constructs to failure in tension, compression, and torsion modes. All of these tests have axial as well as torsional components. The torsion add-on enables the operator to perform all of these tests on one system. As we talked about before, the dose selection dial on the pen injector is tested, as is the cap removal force. These tests help ensure the patient can easily remove the cap and adjust the dosage properly. Medical tubing, such as catheters, can be tested to ensure they can withstand twisting that may occur due to patient movement or routing of the cables through or tubing through and around medical equipment. Guide devices for angioplasty are used to steer the guide wire through the tortuous path. These devices undergo torsional loads as the surgeon maneuvers it to safely advance the guide wire. Torsion testing helps assure that those devices are durable and can handle the twisting that occurs during use. Wearable medical devices can benefit from torsion testing to simulate the torsional load seen as the user moves and twists in everyday movements. Testing can be done on the device itself to ensure it doesn't break or tear. It may also be performed on the adhesives used to secure the device, thus confirming that the bond is maintained throughout regular motion. And finally, the dials or knobs on a monitoring device may be tested to characterize tactility and durability over the life of the product. This is just a small subset of the testing possible with the torsion add-on. There are many other applications and tests that can be performed. All they require is the right fixturing. There are a lot of gripping and fixture options available for use with the torsion add-on and torsion testing in general. These axial torsion grips are designed for combined loading and work even for full reverse stress testing. Side action grips are a versatile gripping solution for many specimens. The jaw faces can be adjusted to accommodate different specimen thicknesses. There are also a range of jaw faces to suit various applications. For example, rubber faces are ideal for holding glass syringes. They're able to hold the glass syringe securely without damaging and potentially inducing premature failure. Torsion lathe chucks are useful for a wide range of round components. They can also be adjusted, however, to clamp onto irregular shaped objects, such as packaging, or a bone substrate that's being used in bone screw testing. They provide a strong and consistent gripping force throughout the test. A 3-jaw chuck is commonly used for thin, round specimens, things such as catheters, tubings, and wires. These can also be used to hold a probe or a component or another fixture component. For example, this could be used to hold a drill bit for testing bone screws. These grips with adjustable rubber-coated posts were designed to accommodate various size specimens, such as pharmaceutical bottles or vials. They can also be used to secure irregular shaped components as well. A component test plate or T-slot table can be used with the torsion accessory. These plates have either a bolt or a T-slot pattern that allows users to easily secure a variety of components. This is especially useful for an irregular shaped component that you just can't easily grip. The component can be secured to the plate, and then an appropriate grip or fixture would be mounted to the crosshead to apply the load. Application-specific fixtures, such as those used for lower lock testing or the testing of spinal implant constructs, are available as well. It's very common for an application to use a combination of different fixtures. For the lower lock seen here, the required reference connector is used on the upper side, while a standard side action grip with rubber faces is used to clamp onto the syringe below. We've just looked at the most commonly used fixtures, but Instron is able to design and make fixtures to suit many applications. Early in the presentation, I briefly touched on the main benefits of the torsion add-on system. These are product use simulation, reduced time to market, and improved lab efficiency. Let's look at each of these in a bit more detail. We'll begin with product simulation. To truly understand how a product will work, it's important to mimic how it will be used in real service. It's important to understand the axial and torsion loads that are required to use the product. Will a medical professional be able to operate the device as intended without the use of tools, or with only the tools provided for this purpose? What forces must the device withstand to avoid breakage during packing, transport, storage, and possible misuse or mishandling? It's critical for design validation to understand how devices will work when used for their intended purpose. The Test Profiler module in Blue Hill Universal offers the flexibility to use axial and torsion loading in various combinations. This would often be used for design validation or quality testing. For example, it can be used to run a torsion test on the dosage dial of a pen injector. And then in the next step, it can go straight into an axial cap removal test. Performing axial and torsion tests on one system can help complete testing faster, which of course can then reduce time to market. For example, a user could determine the insertion strength on a bone screw and then swab out the upper fixture to perform an axial pull-out strength test. This eliminates the need to move systems or specimens and fixtures between separate axial and torsion systems. In addition, data analysis can be completed in a timely manner, as the user won't need to pull and consolidate data from multiple systems. The torsion functionality is fully integrated into user-friendly Blue Hill Universal. This includes control of the torsion motor, but it also includes torsion calculations. Because it's user-friendly, because it mimics the Blue Hill operation for axial, operators require minimal training to run axial torsion tests. The final benefit is lab efficiency. Adding a torsion add-on to an axial system that is already in use or being added to the lab takes up less space than having a standalone torsion or axial torsion system. Lab space is at even more of a premium now with COVID and necessary social distancing. If the separate axial and torsion systems shown here are placed 6 feet apart, by the time you account for the system footprint and monitors, they end up taking up nearly 13 feet of benchtop space. But adding torsion to an axial system doesn't impact the footprint, so it still only requires about 30 inches of space. Adding a torsion add-on has a lower cost than purchasing a complete dedicated system. It's also compatible with existing fixtures, meaning you can possibly use many of the fixtures you already have in your lab. Adding a torsion add-on to the system does not have any effect on the system's axial capacity, its test space, or its travel. So you can use the torsion motor without sacrificing your axial testing capabilities. This system is capable of meeting a number of international test standards, many of which we've discussed today. It also has the flexibility to meet internal test requirements that companies create to ensure their products perform as expected. Regardless of what type of product you make or what tests you perform, traceability is always a priority in the biomedical industry. Instron Blue Hill Universal's traceability module helps customers achieve 21 CFR Part 11 compliance by giving the users the power to know who did what, when, and why, and to prove it. This module works on the torsion add-on as well as on axial test systems. There are 4 software components that help users meet 21 CFR Part 11 compliance. The first is revision history, which tracks all changes made to methods, samples, and report files. Method changes, such as updates to the test rate or the calculations, are all tracked. Changes made to tested samples, such as the date and time the test was performed, along with the reason the test ended, are tracked in the sample file. And changes to the report templates, including what items have been added, which may be a result table or an electronic signature area, are all tracked in the report template files as well. The second component is the ability to replace manual signatures with electronic signatures to reduce the amount of paperwork and have more traceable signature path. An audit trail tracks all the changes made to all Blue Hill Universal files, as well as all system level usage, such as user logins. It can even identify when somebody has tampered with a Bluehill Universal file. This audit trail is searchable, which makes it a lot easier to find information that might be requested during an audit. Last, Bluehill Universal offers 3 different security options, all of which allow lab managers to configure user permissions in the software. These permissions may be used to grant access to certain functions for operators who have completed the proper training, or they might limit access to particular functions and to particular users as needed. These features, revision history, electronic signatures, audit trail, and enhanced security, enable users to know who did what, when, and why in their test system. And even more importantly, it gives them the power to prove it during an audit. Instron also offers IQ/OQ services to help customers meet the 21 CFR Part 11 requirements. This includes transducer verifications and qualification of the system and the software, including calculations. This way you can begin to use your Instron system more quickly. What I've shown here is just a very high-level summary of Bluehill traceability. If you're interested in more detail, we do have a lot of information on instron.com, including a video that explains the benefits of this package in more detail. So please feel free to go and check that out if you would like some additional information. That concludes today's presentation. Thank you for joining me to talk about torsion testing and applications. Landon, Kyle, and I are ready to answer your questions. We'll begin with some of the questions that were submitted by today's attendees when they registered for the webinar. But please go ahead and continue to submit any additional questions you may have, and we'll respond to those as time allows. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa. So I'm going to go through a bunch of questions which have been submitted during the presentation and some which are submitted ahead of time. Anything that I don't get to right now, we'll probably reach out to you separately to open up a dialogue, because it may be a very specific topic or something that may just require more information from you. But kind of the first question that I'm going to answer, so we got, what are suitable description of jaws and fixtures applied to test syringes for single-use hypodermic needles? So realistically, we could do an entire presentation solely on syringe needle testing. And it really depends on what standard you're following, how you're evaluating the functionality of the device, and all those can change which fixtures are required. I mean, for instance, if you're doing a test to determine the cap removal, torque for a syringe, like Teresa said, we typically use a side action grip to hold the barrel and then a lathe chuck to grab the cap while rotating. If you're evaluating the torsional strength of just a hypodermic needle, we would most likely opt for micro precision drill chucks to hold both ends. So it's hard to say that there's one specific solution for syringes and needles. It depends on the application and exactly what you're trying to understand about that component. So next question, what fixtures are available for axial torsion testing on a tubular sample? So this really depends on the diameter of the tube and the strength of the tube walls. For most tubular testing, we always will recommend plugs to be used to prevent crushing the structure due to the clamping forces of the grip. If the diameter is smaller than 10 millimeters or so, usually drill chucks would be the best option because they do spread out that clamping force along the entire diameter. But once you move larger than that, it can be too large for a drill chuck. So we would typically use a screw action grip with a V-shaped face. The V geometry basically allows you to have more contact points with the specimen. So again, having a larger sample clamping surface to reduce the total stress. Moving on, we have, can I test large components with the system as well? So Teresa had mentioned in her presentation that the torsion add-on can be used on both single and dual column systems. If test space is really a major concern, the dual column will provide significantly more room than a single column. Really the main limiting factor is the distance between what's known as the throat distance, or the distance between the center of the load string and the back of the crosshead, or the back of the column, rather. For single columns, you can actually address this using a crosshead extender, which actually adds an additional 235 millimeters of space between your load string and the back of the column. And that is compatible with the torsion add-on, and it does not reduce the actual torque capacity of the system at all. And let's say you're testing a large component that really you can't grip it. It has to be held down using some sort of tap plate or a T-flat table. So the biaxial cell is typically mounted to the base, but you can actually mount it to the rotating member as well. The only caveat being the rotation is limited to plus or minus 180 degrees to prevent wrapping the cables around the biaxial cell. We have, can I easily switch to axial only testing? So being, a universal test system, we've designed the torsion add-on to easily allow the user to swap between biaxial and axial only. So the nice thing is the torsion drive can actually be locked or unlocked, allowing the user to align the load string using an alignment bar that we provide, and then actually lock it in place for axial testing. So this makes sure that your base and your upper connection points are always going to be perfectly aligned when you're switching back to axial only testing. And the biaxial cell can be used for axial only testing. It does have somewhat lower specifications than just a standalone axial cell. So operators can mount their axial only cells to the underside of the torsion add-on using what we call a piggyback adapter, or they can also mount their axial cell to the base like we mount the biaxial cell. So, and then I had a question. I'm interested in the output. Can we use this to confirm if two coupled parts are slipping? I'm assuming it can output torque, RPM, and angle in a graph. Yeah, so with Bluehill, you have a lot of flexibility with what you want to show on the graph in a single test. If you wanted to show torque, RPM, and angle, you could over time. So you can monitor all of those live and then use that data to get a better sense of whether the parts are slipping or not. And you can actually have end of test criteria. So if, let's say, the torque or the angle goes beyond a certain point during your test, and you know that that would be indicative of the specimen slipping, you would automatically have the test stop. So it looks like those are all the questions that have come in. But if you have any more, we'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, and Landon, I just wanted to address this one again because I mentioned it earlier on in the presentation, but we got some questions about it as well. So the torsion add-on can be added to any 5900 system or 6800 system, which is one of our newest models, and this can go on to any. Typically, we see them mostly on the tabletop system, so single column for lower capacity and dual column for kind of mid-size capacity. But we're also able to put them on the larger capacity floor models. So while we typically say 68 and 5900, it is possible to go as far back as the 5500 series. And we can add the torsion add-on to a 5500 system along with a control electronics upgrade. We do need to upgrade the control electronics so that we can have all the proper control functionality and software available to run the torsion on that system.
So we just had one question that came in about gripper misalignment that could cause the small fiber to break during a tensile torsion testing. So the systems have a specification for the alignment of the crosshead to the base, which at the base there is at maximum plus or minus 0.5 millimeters of misalignment, and that value can go up to, I believe, 1 millimeter, but I would have to confirm that, of misalignment the further you go up. But if you have a situation or an application where concentricity alignment is super critical, you do have the option to either add some sort of XY stage or an alignment fixture, and then use an alignment bar to basically tighten it down and ensure that you have perfect alignment. So there are a couple of ways that you could go about that to make sure that you have the alignment you need to run your test without causing any sort of damage to the specimen.
All right, so it looks like that kind of hits on all of the questions that have kind of come in. So we'll just kind of wrap this up here. For those questions that weren't addressed live today, in case there were any of those that come in here at the last minute here, we'll be sure to follow up with those individuals by email. I also want to mention that we'll be emailing each of you a copy of today's recording along with the slide deck. And our next webinar is scheduled for February 25th, when I'll be joined by Stefan Botsky, another of our wonderful application engineers. He'll be discussing tips for testing at non-ambient temperatures in environmental chambers. I'm going to drop a link into chat so you can get signed up. So sending that now. And I also want to mention real quick that we have a brand new virtual demo studio where you can connect with some of our application engineers like Landon to get a live one-on-one demo of any of the equipment you saw in today's webinar or any equipment that you might have questions about. Simply reach out to your local sales representative or reach us through our contact us page on instron.com to let us know what you'd like to see. I actually just saw it for myself for the first time yesterday, and I might be a little biased, but I thought it was pretty awesome. And with that said, I just want to thank Teresa for presenting today, and thank you to Landon and Kyle for keeping an eye on questions. And also thanks to all of you for attending. We really appreciate your time. Stay healthy, everyone. We hope to see you again next time.